But for now, we will introduce our youngest speaker, and her name is Dafrose Camille Bajaro. Okay, she is a geospatial intelligence analyst. Now, her work might sound very complex and difficult to grasp, and maybe her work really is difficult to grasp, but I really appreciate that I know she spent a lot of time to try to simplify and have us understand what she does in the easiest way possible. So she had prepared some slides for us to help us understand what it is really an environmental scientist and geospatial intelligence analyst does. Thank you, Dafrose.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. So the theme of my presentation is Dafrose the Explorer. I was told that this will be a travel summer themed presentation. So what best way to represent myself than as Dora the Explorer? Um, hi again, I'm Daph. So I'm an environmental scientist. I worked as an environmental scientist for 5 years. And then currently I'm working with geospatial analytics for the previous 1.5 years. So just a quick outline on my journey. I graduated with an environmental science degree back in 2017 from Ateneo. And then immediately after graduation, I became an environmental scientist at GHD. So this is an engineering consulting firm working on infrastructure projects. And also, a few years in, I became a project manager. And then currently, I'm a geospatial intelligence analyst, project manager, and staffing manager. There's like 3 different, I'll simplify this later. No, but can we go back to the, okay. So as you can see, it's an upward arrow, no? Kasi parang I've been having difficulties explaining what I really do since graduating. So I started with, as a student, I studied trees. When I became an environmental scientist, I studied the impacts of infrastructure to the environment. And then now, I've simplified it to basically making maps. Geospatial means location data, so now I'm making maps. All right, next slide, please. So we'll go through the process of my journey one by one. No? So first up, why did I study environmental science? So, diba, when you're in high school, you like contemplate on paths because you're asked to take the UPCAT or the ADMU exam. And I was contemplating, I wanted to be a doctor. So I applied to a health science program. And then while waiting for results, I participated in a river cleanup activity. And then it was in that river cleanup activity that I realized, oh, I like what I'm doing. So before entering into school, I wrote a letter, I want to go into environmental science, and they approved. So that's why I entered Ateneo as an environmental science major. So that's me back in high school studying trees. Thank you. Next slide, please. So after graduating, what can I do with EnviSci? It's not a very common course, right? So as someone from university, the training really is for environmental scientists to go into research and academia. But I'm like, I want to go corpo. Like, why corpo when you're an environmental scientist? I think I'll explain more later, but basically I went into, there's a lot of different paths you can go to, but I decided to go into consulting, specifically engineering consulting, where I try to see the impacts of infrastructure in the environment, but also noting here that there's an management consulting, where you try to align the investments of people to values through environmental, social, and governance frameworks. But that's not what I do. What I did was work on infrastructure projects. So where's the environmental science in infrastructure projects, right? So next slide, please. So why are environmental scientists needed in engineering consulting? So project proponents have to know the impacts of their project to the environment and to society. Plus, infrastructure depends on the environment to get what they need from the environment, right? So here's a sample of me. So in this project, I was working on a water supply system, and they wanted to find out, oh, the water is murkier than usual. So let's send environmental scientists to sample the water and find out, why is water dirtier? So that's the project over there. So, all right, next slide, please. So what are the sample projects I've been involved in? So I've talked about sediment sampling, that's on the top right. I've also been involved in environmental impact assessments, health impact assessments, mangrove monitoring, audits for infrastructure projects, feasibility and pilot studies, and I think what's unique here is contamination. Like, whoop, bakit biglang may contamination? So just a little bit background on this. So when someone says they want to build the site, we have to make sure that there's due diligence, right? Let's say there was a former oil depot. Did this oil depot leave behind pipes with leaks, and is there like soil and water contamination on the ground? That's what we try to find out and what we try to clean up. So we devise a methodology to like clean up those kinds of contaminated sites. All right, next slide. So it's a day in the life of an environmental scientist. You know, I thought I would be like a Nat Geo kind of environmental scientist, but but not Geo. I was a not Geo environmental scientist. So mostly it's talking to people, no? So I didn't expect this as an undergraduate. But when you go to the environment, you have to talk to the barangay. Like, I need a boat, go to the barangay. I need people to survey the community. You need barangay health workers, right? So the first stop really is to talk to people number two, before you collect samples from the environment. So when you collect samples, diba, you need people to guide you. Nasaan ba yung mga tributaries? What's the safest way going there? So that's why you need people, the locals also, to guide you on what to do. And then after collecting the samples, having the laboratory analyze the samples, we analyze the data back in the office. And then a few years into managing this kind of work, I also got to manage teams where I manage stakeholder specialists, scientists, and engineers during site and project work. Next slide, please. So why am I now working on data as a geospatial analyst? So why the jump from environmental science to data? So I've noticed that we've worked on so much data. I mean, there's a lot of data, but we put it in reports. But I'm like, who really reads these reports? So I noticed that, number one. And then I noticed, number two, that the industry is trying to go digital. So from pen and paper forms, when we go to households, nagiging survey forms. From modeling parameters of the environment, we go to machine learning and digital twins. From PDF reports, like I mentioned earlier, now we have dashboards and interactive web maps. And from Excel, we're transitioning to Python and SQL. So basically, there's just loads of data we don't know what to do about. And so that's why I went into data science thinking, might as well be one of the first to go from environment to data, because there's a lot of things we can do to make better decisions with the environment. Next slide, please. So what do I do now as an as a geospatial intelligence analyst? So we answer questions like top right, where are the best sites to establish renewable energy? Questions like on the bottom left, where do we put climate smart shrimp programs, and where do we put reforestation efforts? We also work on climate information systems. Let's say, what kind of climate data do agriculture and health stakeholders want? So we try to put that in a report. We also try to link data sets between like DOH, Pag-asa, etc. Yung mga disconnected data sets, we try to bring them together so that machine learning scientists and health researchers can produce outbreak models. We also develop tools for geospatial analytics. And most recently, so this is something really relevant to what I did before, we also collect ground truth data using drones and train people how to use digital surveying applications to get the data that we want from the environment. All right, next slide, please. So what's a day in the life of a geospatial analyst now? So right now, I'm currently working from home. But, I mean, di ba, parang environmental scientist working from home? But I'm not really alone, because there's a lot of people working at the intersection of environment and technology. That's the people in green in the upper left. So that's a workshop in Thailand. And then I'm also particularly proud of the team, because I'm happy of my team in the bottom left. So I'm happy to work with a team of nerds who are also equally passionate about the environment. So yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That just blew me away. Earlier, I was going back and forth on how I was going to introduce Dafrose, but I was really getting, she gave me this. One thing about Dafrose that I know is that she's very humble. I've known her since she was 5. I just had to say that. I'm so sorry, but I've known her since she was 5, and that's why I'm extra so proud of this presentation that you gave us. And I never really knew like to what extent you were doing all these things. But earlier I was going back and forth, and how was I going to introduce someone who was just so humble about what she's been doing, and at the same time so young, and the amazing thing about this, Daph, is that you are so young, you are just getting started. And while like some of us are already have accomplished, quite some things, you have actually accomplished so much just being at your age. I'm looking forward to all the other things that you would be able to do for the environment and for sustainability. So thank you so much. I